Blush Girl Salon. In this video today you will learn my modern foiling technique. This is for your client who needs a foil to their roots, however they don't want to have a high maintenance regrowth. What you'll learn today is my sectioning pattern, my foil placement, my toning process, how I keep her ends bright and healthy even though they're already lightened, and my foil board technique. This is my modern foil process tutorial. Just show you a little bit of a before of Emma's hair. So obviously she's got a beautiful level 7 base color, and previously she's been having a blonde balayage done. Okay, so this is how I section the back. So I do 3 sections, 1, 2, 3, and I always do my little V here over the crown. I just find that it works really well for this traditional foil technique, and also for balayage as well. So this is always how I will section up my full heads of foils, and it works really well because you can just follow up on that angle, so meeting with that angle there, and that just falls really nicely around the hairline, and it just makes sense. So I'll get started now. Okay, so I'm just getting my first section. My first couple of sections around the hairline are always micro foils, and they're a little bit closer together. So usually I will do my first 3 around the hairline this way, and then as I move up deeper into the section, I will just have a slightly thicker weave. There's only a very slight difference. I do the same thing when I'm doing a balayage actually. So it's almost the exact same technique, it's just that I'm foiling to the roots. My sections are about 1/2 centimetre, so I am wanting to get a really good coverage, and because my foils are so baby fine, I need to make sure that I'm putting a lot of them in. And I always make sure that when I do my weave that it's even all the way across, and that you can see that it's translucent, that you can see through the weave. That way I know I'm going to get a really clean lift, clean and even lift actually. I notice when I'm watching people foil that they will get a heavy weave at either at the start or at the end, and that can be really bad. If that happens, you need to put down the hair and reweave it, because it will give you an orange mark in your work, which is really upsetting when everything else is perfect. The reason why I love this sectioning, and you can see, actually, sorry, here I've just slightly started to brick a little bit. It's just because it's a wider part of the hair. So I will just brick a couple of foils and then I'll go back to going straight up. And you'll see when I get to the top of that V why I foil like this and why I enjoy this foil pattern, because it just perfectly meets up to that V, which is sitting on the crown of the head, which means that my foils are on a really nice angle for natural fall. And that's why I pretty much section like this for everything I do. Haven't told you guys about the foil board yet, but I can't wait to show you more. It's the best thing ever. I also use this for everything I do, and it makes foiling really quick and easy. It gives me something to lean on. It makes my foils so close to the roots. So you can see that this just comes up and meets really nicely on that V section on the crown of the head. And I should mention that I'm using the Foil Me original foil. We get them in the flat box so that I can use them on my board, and then I just wrap them around and stack them on the board. And I'm using the powder lightener and 10 vol, and we use Original Mineral at Blush Girl. And I always start my back with 10 vol, and then when I start my front I use 20 vol. That way everything processes evenly, and I'm always aiming to be able to rinse everything off at the same time rather than rinsing the back and then the front. Generally I find I can do this. You will also notice that I actually don't fold any of my foil. I will just wait till the end, and then I will just fold the whole section together just a little bit to move it out of the way and to just secure it. I find with the I think it's the board technique that helps me to not get slip with my foils. But so here we go on the crown section. As you can see, because of the V, that first foil is really small, but again it just falls so nicely over the crown, and I just love this technique so much. Like the hairline though, with these foils I just make them a little bit more fine than the others, just because it is sitting right on the top of the head. So I just pay particular attention in this area. I always say, like, all of the foils are important, they should all be perfect, but when I'm getting to an area where it's going to be visible at all times, I'm always extra careful. You can see how tight and how close it is to the roots. Again, that's the power of the board. So I'm just meeting my foils at the top now. This is my last foil in this section, and I just make sure that it's so perfect, nice and fine. I just want to show you, this is my back section, and what I will do is now I want to just tip out a little bit. I think there's a lot of different ways that you can do a tip out. Sometimes I'll do it in a foil, sometimes I will just do it freehand, just depending on where the hair's at. So Emma's hair is already heavily lightened, but I do just want to do a few very fine with a really low vol developer, just clean out some of this in between. So I'm going to use my board in a different way now to do that, and it will make a big difference. So rather than going to the basin and bleaching all the ends or using something really harsh, I'm just going to pick up some really fine pieces and just give them a little bit of a pop of blonde. It makes a huge difference, even though it's only a tiny little bit of hair. And because I'm using the very low developer, the condition of her hair will be fine. I'm not going to overdo it at all. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that now. So I think there's so many different ways of tipping out. If I'm working on someone who doesn't have any color in their hair, then I'm going to do all of my tip out in a foil. So I think every single person, it's different. That's why I find it hard to train on this topic. But anyway, with Emma's hair, I think I've already said, it's previously lightened. So I want to be really careful with it. This is why I don't want to put it in a foil, because when you put it in your foil, I think you can create a lot of damage. So just leaving it out to the air. And I'm not particularly fussy about using a clay lightener. I just continue to use my normal powder lightener. I'll make it a little bit thicker, and I've just mixed it with the 1.5%. So really low vol. And it's just going to clean up those ends just a little bit, just shift off the old toner and just brighten it up. It actually does, it really makes a difference. So I've really been enjoying doing it this way. And the other little tip, I've seen a lot of people that they will, which is great, time and place for everything. I'm not a massive fan of the back combing if you don't need to. So I tend to steer away from that whenever I can. I'd rather pick up a section between each foil than pick a bunch of hair up, back comb it, and then put your bleach on. And I find that that causes orange marks through the hair. It can cause orange marks through the hair. So just my opinion on that. I'm just using the board in another way here. So this is the same tool that I'm using with my foils on it, and I'm just using it for some freehand without foil. So I don't need to be too worried about my lines. Like, I'm always thinking about it. But when I'm painting it on, again, low vol, already lightened, that liner's already been created. Those foils are going to create that beautiful blend. So I don't need to be really, really fussy about where that lightning's going, because it's not creating the color, it's just shifting off old tone. There's a big difference. Because I make my bleach quite thick, I'm not worried about it bleeding onto the other hair. And I'm just going to work my way through the top here, and then I will get onto my front section. And I always do it like this because that way, if I did happen to need to rinse out my back first, then everything's already completed there, so I can do that if I need to. So this is my pattern, my section pattern for the front. So I do 4 sections, 1, 2, 3, 4, and what I'm going to do is work from here and all the way around. Alright, so back on the hairline again, so microfoils, and I will do 3 nice and close together, and then I move back to my center, half a centimeter spacing. Again, it's just about creating lightness around the face, around the perimeter, like you would naturally get. And I just kind of pivot my foils as I come around to make sure that I'm covering that area behind the ear as well. And then I'll just foil up and meet with my next section. This is a good angle to see the way I use the board actually. So I use the board, you can see how I balance it on my chest depending where I'm standing. And the trick with the board is just to get the perfect tension between your body and their head, so you're not pushing, you're just balancing it there. I just thought of something that's really important when you are putting your bleach on, is to always feather the bottom. So if you just come straight down and stop, you get a line where you can see where the bleach was fresh, and it's really hard to tone that out. So onto the front, exact same idea of doing 3 foils, 3 or 4. Sometimes I do more, sometimes I do less, depending on the person, depending on their natural level. But micro foils close together. And what I do on this particular technique is, once I've finished my face framing foils, I will then switch back to foiling straight up the side and meet on the top crown. Oh, you'll see in a minute. I don't know exactly how to explain that actually. Depending on what I was trying to achieve, sometimes I would do my section where it's going straight down the part. This is just a different way that I've been doing it recently, which I've really enjoyed, and I'm getting a really good result. But you do have to be very particular about those final few foils meeting on your hairline. So I'll talk you through that in a minute. Oh, here we go. So I'm moving back to this direction now, And I know a lot of people use this same placement when they're doing balayage, and that's where I kind of got that idea to do it this way. So I will just foil all the way up, and as I get closer to the part line, I will do my foils a little bit more fine and a little bit closer together. Throughout the whole head, my foils it's a very fine weave, and that's why I put so many in, to make sure I get the coverage on the regrowth, but to make sure that my foil is low maintenance, and I call it invisible because I think it's a good way to describe it. You can't see it as it grows out. Where are you, Lauren? Come back. See how I feather it? I always feather it down, trying to pick up any natural colour that's a little bit further down and trying not to overlap. You can see here really well my weave size. So these last couple are the most important. Just watch how fine and perfect that weave is. If you get that wrong, then it will ruin the whole thing, because it's going to sit right on the top of the head. So a little bit more fine. These ones, just a little bit. Okay, and then I just repeat the process on this side. So it's the same section pattern as if you were doing a face frame, like a balayage face frame, but to the roots. I actually think I ended up doing maybe 5 or 6 foils around the front, back. Just do whatever feels right. Everyone's a little bit different. This shows a really good angle on my weave again. So you can see it's a little bit thicker here, where it's sitting underneath the part. My sections are always clean, and that line always perfect. It makes such a big difference. It took me a long time to learn that. I think sometimes when you're doing a full head of foils, it can be quite overwhelming and you can start rushing, but as soon as you put one dodgy foil in, it will ruin everything. So just, if you do a section that's not neat, or you do a weave that's not perfect, put the hair down, put your things down, get your sections right, and just start again. Pays off in the end, because then at the basin your toning time will be a lot faster. You'll be really happy with what you see when you rinse out the foils, and you won't be panicking about how you're going to tone that. Baby fine, because I'm coming to my hairline. Make sure that it's translucent. There's no chunky bits on the ends. And my final weave. So what I do is I will get the tiniest part out as, what would you call that? It's definitely not a veil. It's just making that weave even. So of course there's always a little bit of hair in between, so I'm just making sure that I've got that little bit of hair in between on the top as well. Otherwise I'd have two back-to-back foils, but that little bit that I left out is so fine. And that last weave, those last few weaves that are meeting on the top, they're the finest of all, but they're the closest together. Pretty much a back-to-back foil there, just with a tiny weave out. Now I'm going to go back and tip out. And I always treat the back and the front differently, like they're almost like two different heads of hair. I think it's really important to identify this, because most of the time a blonde client is going to have more fragile hair around the front, a little bit of breakage, heat. Emma's got some heat damage, so I'm a lot more gentle at the front, and I do a lot less tipping out, because I want to make sure this hair is healthy. So I'm just using my 1.5 fold, 1.5% I should say. I'm a very creative stylist, so I'm not very good with my technical language. Hopefully you can understand. So just feathering that on. You see how fine everything I'm doing on Emma today is fine. It's all really fine work. It's the best kind of blonde work. It's long lasting, and it doesn't go brassy when your tone fades, because the color has come down even and the foils are even. It's so important. I don't always weave when I'm tipping out. Sometimes I will just take the whole section if I wanted something a bit more bold. Alright, so this is my modern foil to the root, or my modern twist on a traditional foil to the root. I think a traditional foil can feel a little bit boring, but I've been experimenting a lot to come up with something that still gives you a really modern look. So what this achieves is it will give you foils to your roots, but your foils will be invisible as they grow out. So it's not where you root shadow it with your toner, it's the actual foil pattern and the weave. It will be invisible as it grows out, even without shadowing the toner, which is what I'm always aiming for. I don't want to use the toner to hide or create anything, I just want to use that to enhance the foil work. So time and place for everything, but that's what I'm trying to achieve here. Also, what this placement will do, if you just pop your head up, it's the same placement I'll use with my balayage as well. So once you understand this placement, you can adjust it to be a balayage or a foil to the root. And what it does is it allows me to hug the hairline and create a really nice brighter blonde around the front, even when I'm doing a foil to the root all over. I find that that comes out really beautiful and really modern again. And then what I've done by tipping out in between, which I have to be really careful, everyone's obviously different, but I always find it really tricky when someone has got over lightened hair, heavily foiled hair, but we still want to create some dimension, in the colour, and we want to create that bit of a pop at the bottom. I think if you foil it in a foil, it has the potential to create damage, and that's when I like to do a freehand lightening service. So it's only a little bit of hair, but you'll be surprised how much difference this makes. So what this is going to do, it will create a really great impact where she's got her foils to the root, but then she still does have that little, just slightly lighter going towards the end. So I find that works better than doing like a base and balayage where you're just painting straight bleach on all over. I prefer to do everything I can, as much as I can at the chair. And then that makes my finishing off process quite quick. So by just grabbing those little bits of hair, it really makes a big impact. The other thing to keep in mind, like I will never grab a whole bunch of hair for my tip out and tease up and then back comb, and then apply. I think it works better to just go through each foil and grab a nice fine section. Otherwise, I find that you can create like warm bands through the hair. So that's another little thing that I have discovered over time. And the last thing I wanted to just say with my foil technique, especially towards the top, so these are the most important foils. Anything that's sitting around the hairline and around the crown, of course, everything's important, but just pay particular attention to your last couple. Those few foils that are sitting on the part here, they meet at the top, and they are super baby fine. Really tight together, a little bit closer together than the rest, but a little bit finer with the weave to the rest. So around my hairline, I do them a lot closer. Around my part line, I do them a lot closer, but my weave is tiny. It's so tiny. You'll see that in my video anyway. And then when I'm working through the middle, I'm a little bit heavier with the weave, and my sections are probably about 1 centimetre, and then so 1/2 centimetre, and then half of that for my areas that you can see. so I've rinsed Emma's foils and I'm about to tone. I'm going to tone back at the chair. It's not what I would usually do. However, I just thought I'd show you that toning process, and I just wanted to show you pre-tone as well. So this is the foil work before any toner. So you can see that those foils are so baby fine and so close to the root that it almost doesn't even need toning, which is what I want to see. And you can also just see as well how they're just a little bit heavier around the hairline. So I'll get started. And I am going to add some Core Restore today to my toner. I really enjoy doing it that way rather than in the bleach. I just find you get a really nice result. So cheers. What I'm going to do is I am just going to section out my front panel. So I'm just going to section out that bit there. And I'm not going to use a different toner on it, but I'm just not going to tone as long on that section. So I will put the toner on there last, and that way it will just give that illusion and enhance that little bit of like a slightly brighter front, which is modern. Okay, so I'm just applying my toner now. I've sectioned out that front bit because this is what creates that modern look where it's just a little bit lighter at the front. And I'm not going to use a different toner on that front section, but I'm just not going to leave it on as long. So I put my back on first, leave it a couple of minutes, and then I'll bring it through the front. However, as you can see, I do paint my toner just on the very front, on the top. So all the way to the front, only on that very top section, just to soften that part line, but I leave the rest. And I'm just painting my toner through about 1 inch. And because I do want to just slightly shadow it out, just slightly, I will leave that on longer than the ends. So I don't use a different toner on the ends. Again, I just wait 5 minutes and then I'll bring it through to my ends really briefly. So my toner it's original mineral. I can't even remember. What is the toner? That's a good question. What is it? I will think of that. As you can see, I'm not hiding anything. Actually, I'd love to see this colour without a toner. I think sometimes we use toners too much. But anyway, my toner is an 8 with a little bit of 916, just a tiny bit, because Emma does like a cooler result. Okay, so now I'm bringing my toner onto my ends. So what I do with my toner for my ends in this case, it's always a little bit different. But what I've done here is same mix. I've actually just diluted it a little bit. So I've added a little bit of extra 1.5% to dilute it. And I'm just bringing it through my ends. And then the last thing I'll do is pop it on the 2 front sections. And I, maybe leave it on for 5 minutes. And actually, I think on this day, just because of the filming and everything, I probably just slightly overtoned it, just ever so slightly. So I think it was on in the end for about 5-10 minutes, and I think probably 5 would have been best. After Emma had washed her hair once, it came out really, really beautiful. So I think this foiling technique barely needs toning. That's the whole point. Toning process is very, very quick. So like I said, I did just slightly overtone Emma's hair by accident. But usually what I would probably recommend is put this on and take it off very quickly. Here's the result of my modern foiling technique to the roots. So as you can see, Emma is nice and blonde. Her foils do go to her roots, but they are completely invisible, meaning that you can't see any stripes, lines, you can't see where they're starting. They're so fine, it's going to grow out beautifully, so it's not going to give her issues with a high maintenance regrowth. You can also see how that toning technique has just given me a little bit more brightness at the front, which is a really modern technique as well. And that tipping out has just given those ends a little bit of a bright pop, which is also what I think makes it a more modern foil technique.